Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Stranger Nerds podcast. I'm Tommy Grant, and we have Connor Vandemark, Mitchell Lee, and Nick Izzo, and we are your hosts, the Jersey Nerds. And tonight we continue our adventure through Stranger Things with Chapter 4, The Body. Connor, Nick, did your predictions hold up from last week?
Some did.
Oh, you bet.
So,
Remind the people, because I'm having trouble tracking your predictions as well.
we should definitely like note this, and I need to add a new spreadsheet for this.
Let's do that, Connor. I agree.
That's fair. Would you like me to go first?
So I guess let's track back. Connor, Nick, do you remember your predictions from last week?
All right.
Yes,
If I remember correctly, where it left off was one thing I was definitely wrong about was they still kept 11 under wraps, I guess you can say. Like she did know, even though I kind of thought Mike might be more pissed at 11 than he actually was.
He started off pissed.
You know, he started off pissed, but at the same time, like I thought that he was like, "Oh, get the hell out of my house," kind of pissed. That was one. What was the other one that I was thinking of? I thought the other prediction. I had two main ones, and that was the one we should write these down next time. Next time.
I agree.
Actually, hold on. Actually, I might have it in my notes on my phone. Look at me thinking ahead. Thinking ahead.
Using the big old noggin.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I did write it down. Nope, I did not write down for episode 4 predictions. I had episode 3 predictions, but I don't have episode 4 predictions. No, maybe I was right. Episode 3, I think it's called My Mother.
Which one is it, damn it?
I don't know.
Get on with it.
Get on with it.
So my prediction, I feel like both of mine came true, although with one of them I was very vague. I guessed that Will was still going to be alive, and I'm pretty sure that is
that was a bit
evident based on him being inside of the wall and such. And then my second one didn't happen until like the very, very end, but I predicted that Hopper was going to go investigate the laboratory, but he doesn't really get there until like minute 48 or
Hopper
something.
went into full investigation mode, so you were pretty right on the money with that.
He did.
Yeah, you just jog my memory. It was the other thing about with 11 and how she was saying that Will was still at the house hiding, or that's what they directed him in the first place. That was the other thing that we did talk about. They definitely jogged my memory on that one. Because obviously 11 was able to get the singing sound from the radio of the song that Will likes to sing.
Yeah, I mean, this episode very much was kind of the peak investigation episode of the season, because you have Hopper investigating the whole state police conspiracy. You have Nancy trying to figure out what that monster was she saw, and she's investigating that. And then you have 11 and Mike and everybody else investigating the whole, did they hear Mike? Did they not hear Mike? Or hear Will? I keep getting those two confused. But Hopper definitely goes full into the investigation. But
we're starting to get in, and not to get too ahead of ourselves. I don't think this is a spoiler by any means, but we're starting to get into kind of a theme of the show where we have one group investigating one thing, one group investigating another thing, and you kind of learn how they're connected.
Yep.
In one way or another. And this, I mean, we've seen a little bit of that, but this was the one where it was really like, the Nancy subplot was more of just, they weren't really investigating or looking at anything. It was more just stuff happening, where now you see Nancy and Jonathan kind of working together to try to figure out what the thing with no face is, while the guys are out there and they're trying to figure out where Will is, how they can communicate with him, and then Hopper's going on his beat up the entire town side quest, which I found very
It's
fascinating.
true.
It was only a few people, well
And
deserved
Joyce,
people.
I mean, you had her talking to I mean, she needs sleeping pills, whatever, just something to make her relax a little bit because she is just sweaty and anxious the entire episode. And it's been like
Yeah,
this for
that.
about 3 straight episodes now.
It's
Well,
true.
I think that's kind of a good starting point to jump into the episode. Is we start off with Hopper and the deputies arriving at the buyer's house, kind of breaking the news that they found Will's body. And it's funny, Hopper gives kind of the same advice to Joyce that Jonathan did last episode of you need to get some sleep. Because Joyce obviously is in shock. She's stressed. She's just in complete denial that Will's dead. She's convinced he's alive, which, later we do find out he is still alive. But just that comparison from last week, everybody's just telling her just go to sleep, just kind of brush it off and get some sleep, which she definitely needs. Um, but then we kind of see her say "fuck that," and a little bit later she goes out into the shed, grabs an axe, and just sits in front of the wall, which was screaming Shining vibes for me. I was just waiting for her to go crazy, just have that
Yes, definitely.
have that
Well,
here's
before
Johnny
that, we get
moment.
a little bit of insight of Hopper kind of telling Joyce, like, hey, when my daughter died, I kind of I heard her as well, and you get a little bit of the Joyce Hopper connection continuing to grow, and you definitely feel like Hopper is going to do absolutely everything possible. We see that later on to
Yeah,
get to the bottom of this because he feels that emotional connection to I lost a kid. How can I help this person who may be going through similar things?
yeah. And I think losing a kid is kind of what does drive him to come back to this small town away from the city. So he's definitely run away from his problems. So now he's kind of going to help Joyce face her problems because he realized that was probably the error of his ways. So I'm all on Team Hopper because he definitely is doing everything he can to help out Joyce at this situation.
Character development.
A lot of
It's
character,
really
a lot of character.
it's really come
It's
along
true.
with him in a nice way.
Yeah, and then shortly after that, we get Joyce and Jonathan at the morgue with Hopper, seeing the body. Title of the episode there. And Joyce is just completely unconvinced that the body is Will's actual body. Something about a birthmark. We don't see it happen, but I'm guessing they probably rolled the body over and there was no birthmark. I'm guessing that's what set Joyce off when she comes storming out, yelling, "That's not my son." But you definitely can tell everybody's, kind of thinking she's crazy.
That was
Well,
one hell of an editing choice, by the way, to not show that, but to rather just cut to her storming out of the morgue.
Absolutely.
I thought that was a really good choice.
oh yeah, definitely. Especially how, because to me, it built up the suspense even later. We'll get to more of the Hopper's investigation storyline later, but like it definitely built up the suspense of him opening the body bag up and finally, seeing Will eventually, or
Yeah.
quote unquote Will.
And it
Um,
allows us as the audience to kind of be sympathetic towards Joyce and Jonathan because we see them fighting in the street of Jonathan saying, you're going crazy. Will's dead. We're not letting him sit in that freezer. Like, we're having a funeral. And Joyce is just completely like, we're not doing that. And us as the audience, we're not really quite sure what to believe. Do we believe Jonathan? Do we believe Joyce? Who do we side with here? Um,
I think that the one thing that like it keeps going back in my mind right now is the way that how like the interaction between Joyce and Jonathan, how they're pretty much foils of each other right now. Because you have Joyce, who seems currently like the irrational one, and no, she is being unhinged because of the fact that no, she's seeing things that she shouldn't be seeing, but she knows that they're right. And Jonathan, who definitely is getting like the portraying as the child who grew up too fast and trying to take on the more responsible role. And like, because generally speaking, you have the parent telling the child to get a grip and like no believe in what's happening, of the perceived reality that everybody else is seeing. And in this case, it's flipped where the is trying to calm the parent. And no, again, Jonathan doesn't realize that until he starts talking to Nancy later, that like, oh, maybe there's something is going on here. Um, but like I thought it was always very interesting of that, like that dynamic of Joyce just freaking out and like running and like being so hyper fixated, and Jonathan actually trying to be the rational one, quote unquote, in this situation, and trying to bring her back to Earth.
Yeah. So I think that kind of ties nicely into the Nancy storyline. We see Nancy and Joyce kind of in a similar path on this episode where they know they've seen something, they know their story's true, but nobody else believes them. We see Nancy trying to tell her story to Steve. Steve just laughs and jokes it off. And we see her telling the cops, a similar story. They think it's, a bunch of nonsense, but we know Nancy saw something in those woods.
And that one
And
cop continues to be absolutely useless.
it drives me nuts.
He
And I
just
know
wanted
that
to know if she was having sex. That's
yeah.
it. He contributed nothing.
And that had to be the most awkward conversation for Nancy to have, being interrogated by these two cops who clearly don't really care. They're just trying to get some interesting story out of her. But we have Mrs. Wheeler kind of just sitting there in the background listening, and Nancy's like, well, what do
Why
I
was she
say?
there?
My guess is because she's still a minor. So for the police to investigate and interview her, they'd have to have a parent there.
Okay, that makes sense.
That's what I got
would
as
be my
well.
only guess.
That's what I gather.
But didn't they have other kids that were taught? Like, didn't Steve talk to the cops as well?
I'm assuming they all did. It was just more Nancy's that they focused on in terms of Nancy's the only one that's concerned that Barb is missing. And that's the point she's trying to drive across later with her mom is, yes, like this is what happened, but the more important concept is Barb is missing and no one seems to care.
It is shocking how little anyone gives a damn about Barb.
Yeah, it's sad, but that's a small town. Like no one seems to really notice. Like they all just think it's a crazy story. Barb might have just jumped, skipped town or something. No one seems to actually take anything seriously except for Hopper. So thankfully we have Hopper for all that.
And Hopper is preoccupied with Will, so he can't really be focused on Barb right now.
Well, the other thing too was that like, did he even get wind about Barb yet? Like, because I feel like if he knew, because I'm assuming this whole talking place takes place the day after that. Remember correctly because that Barb let the parents know. I mean, sorry, Nancy let the parents know, like Barb's parents, like, hey, they're missing. Like, I need to talk to them. So if this happens the day after, then
yeah, most likely
Hopper's on his own. Hopper's on his own course. So like, if I was Hopper, I'm like, I have another kid missing, and no one knows what fucking happened to her either. Like to me, like I would be thinking if I was in Hopper's shoes, was these two must be connected. And
I was going to ask, at what point do people start making a connection between the two?
Yeah, and like Hopper would probably be the first one to make that connection because of the fact that he actually is caring about this. The question is when he will get this, when he would actually get when he would get the information to actually make the connection.
That's someone that gives a damn.
Yeah, as someone who actually gives a damn. And the funny thing too with that is that how the two people who are most tangential to both these disappearances with Nancy and Mike, they're not communicating with each other about the same issue that they're having right now, where both their best friends are missing, And of course, to us as the observer of this whole situation, no, we know that they're missing most likely because of the same exact thing, but they don't know. They don't trust each other to actually talk about this. Um, which like no, I understand they're siblings and all. Like no, you don't really. Sometimes you don't really respect your siblings. Like no, as someone who has an older sister, I do get that in Mike's point of view. I'm like, why would I tell my sister about this? She probably think I'm crazy. Um, but at the same time, like it's funny. It's kind of funny to me that they're both going to the same shit, and if they actually combine their forces, they probably would have got more shit done.
They're also much younger, so they might not necessarily think that they're connected either.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
They haven't
Um,
reached the point yet because we're just now starting to see kind of the otherworldly forces at play. Whereas right now, they would have no reason, especially not, I would say, especially not Mike, apart from 11, thinking that it's an otherworldly type thing. Nancy's
yeah,
seen something directly.
And on top of that, too, if Hopper actually got this interview report from these deputies, which I doubt he will because of how incompetent they are, they even mentioned how Barb's car was found and it was somewhere across town, but the state police found it. Obviously, we know the state police are covering everything up. So Hopper, being the one who knows the state police are kind of up to some sketchy shit, he probably would have connected the dots. But these two deputies are just like, oh, they found the car. Like, Barb's not missing. It's fine. Like, nothing to worry about.
They just clock in, do nothing, and then clock out.
Yeah, it's it's a shame, but you need some sort of incompetence to frustrate the audience.
oh, that's what I wanted to mention too. It was like on the tip of my tongue early and just like escaped me. Um, definitely during that interview scene with Nancy, as someone
Mhm.
who like I am someone who easily gets um I feel other people's awkwardness when I like watch TV shows, and that can make it sometimes difficult. That scene was miserable for me
Yeah,
because I
it's a
could I
rough
could
I
scene.
know what you mean.
like it's I'm someone who actually would like have to pause the show and like kind of restart the scene because the fact that I have to like I'm feeling the cringe and it's like my whole body reacts to it and like even my girlfriend's like it's like are you okay like are you okay to watch the show? It's like yeah I'm fine but like this is how I watch the when it comes to stuff like this is how I react
Oh
and
boy, Stranger
well
Things is gonna break Connor.
I'll be fine. Well, I know but I'll be fine. It's more so like no I'm just used to it at this point.
Season 3 might be rough for you. I'll just say that.
We'll
Yeah,
find out.
yeah, we'll have to wait and see, Mitchell.
I can already think of a few things where I'm like, ooh,
I
just wait till that.
think I'm on the same brainwave here.
Yeah.
But so a little bit,
Can we? I was gonna say, can
yes.
we get into 11 going to school?
Oh,
They
we
they
will
they
get into
ET
that.
her. They ET her. They
Do
give
we?
her a wig.
I mean,
Yeah, that
do we
wig looked
do we want
awful.
to play a game in how many Stephen King references in these in 80s movies are in this episode? Because there are quite a few.
I can't play because I've already seen the show doc. So
That's fair. I mean, you have the title of the show, The Body, is a direct homage to the novella Stand By Me, was based off of the same short story name from Stephen
Hmm.
King.
I did not know that. And as someone
Yeah.
who
That's not it either.
Stand By Me is like one of my top 30 movies of all time, so love it.
And according to the notes, the state trooper officer David O'Bannon is the surname is taken from Dan O'Bannon, who wrote Alien screenplay. Joyce putting the axe through the wall is, of course, the iconic scene
Shining.
from The Shining. And then the you know, big one was 11 being dressed in the exact same dress and wig that they put ET in. the movie E.T. That was probably the biggest one, and that was probably the most
Yeah.
comical too.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that Mike and everybody kind of saw her as a girl and not just some,
No, Mike
psychopath
was
is what
seeing
people
Mike.
call
Mike's
her.
been seeing her as a girl for about an episode and a half now.
Well, it took it up a whole another notch because the look on his face was like,
He's not wrong.
Yeah. I
he,
mean,
he was not he
he's
was not ready
12,
for
so
this.
it's a little bit more, I guess, confusion and innocence than anything else. But like, he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to talk to her. Um, but it was nice to see them finally go out and about to the school, and then that one bully that's just like, I don't remember his name, but he's just
That would be good old Troy.
comically just above and beyond an asshole.
The
Just
mouth breather.
laughing and making the worst jokes about a dead kid, about a
There-
dead 11-year-old.
All right, but let's back up there for a second. There is no good joke for a dead kid.
Yes,
Right.
but if you were to grade them on a scale of 1 to 10, this would still be bad.
Like, I'm sure this is a scene that made Connor cringe at home because I
Yes.
certainly cringe at this scene.
So again, I cringe at awkward situations. To me, this was an awkward. Not just more so kids being dicks. That's how I took
Sarah
that.
and I laughed because, of course, we know Will's not dead. So, but we laughed just like, all right, come on, man. Try harder.
Don't
Like,
try at all. Stop being a
Like,
dick.
yes, don't try at all. But like, if you're going to put material out there, do better than that. We deserve to advance in front of the people.
Yeah, and so the bullies' names, looking at the show notes, is Troy Walsh and James Dante. I mean, could you have picked a better bully name than Troy?
Dante is
It
also
sounds like
the
a very
last.
bully name.
Ooh, that's another callback because Dante is the last name, I'm pretty sure, of the guy that directed Gremlins.
Is
Yep, Joe Dante directed Gremlins. So that's
Perfect.
another one.
How do you remember that stuff?
You're such a genius.
So they definitely wanted to call back to some 80s classics, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's part of the thing I love about the show. It's just all the '80s nostalgia they throw into it.
But it's not cheap. It
No, not at all.
services the story, and they do a good job of making you feel like you're in the time without pushing it down your throat to where, hey, look at all this cool 80s stuff that doesn't have anything to do with the movie or the plot or anything, or the show or the plot, anything like that. It all is in service of the story and the characters. And that's why it works for me.
Yeah, they definitely do a good job, especially with this episode with the whole dressing 11 up as a girl, bring her to the school, and that awkward conversation they have with the science teacher whose name I'm forgetting. But just that whole
Again,
interaction.
has them use their stuff.
Yeah, it's just funny because like he's like, oh, who is this? And like, oh, it's our cousin. She's from Sweden.
Bad place.
like of all places, just Sweden. No, it just made no sense. But the teacher just went along with it, like, oh, okay, cool.
Well, it kind of
Here's the keys to this room that you shouldn't really be in by yourself, but we're gonna let you go in anyway.
the blonde hair at
Yeah, I
least
did
helps.
not
'Cause
understand that.
the blonde hair helps at least because like most people from like the Norwegian peninsula are like blonde hair, blue eyes.
This is true.
So to me that
I'm sure that
kinda
was
did
going through
check
all
out.
their minds.
I'm well aware of that, but to me, like I was like, oh, that kind of checks out. Like, no, obviously he doesn't really care as much. No, he obviously bit the bait.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get towards the end, I want to jump back to the Nancy Jonathan storyline. We have Nancy just randomly show up at the funeral home where Jonathan's sadly looking at coffins for Will's body. I thought it was kind of awkward. Like, why would you track down someone to a funeral home while they're coffin
Yeah, I
shopping?
didn't get that one either.
That's not the time and place to just say, hey, I need to look at these pictures. But That's what she chose to do.
I got a few questions for you.
I'm ready.
Yeah. Oh no, that was Nancy just showing up at. Hey, I know
Oh
you.
yeah.
I know
Oh,
you're.
I thought you actually had questions for him.
Hey, I know you're planning on picking the coffin for your dead younger brother, but hey, can you come back to the crib and answer a few questions for me? No, that's not the time or the place.
But on the
No,
plus side,
Tommy,
they
I don't
do
have
have.
questions for you.
Thank God. But
And the
but they
guy
do end up
trying to
having. They do have a really good conversation out of it, which was important. You get the whole concept of why Jonathan takes pictures, and we get the realization that like the monster that Nancy saw matches the description of what Joyce told Jonathan, this faceless monster. And they kind of have this little brain blast of like, oh, Joyce might not be going crazy after all. And I thought that was really interesting. That whole scene was just pretty like they're finally getting on track of what's going on.
I was about to comment though
Finally,
before we, yeah, definitely. It's about to comment before we leave this kind of
Well
segment
done.
too. Is the guy trying to sell John the coffin, trying to upsell him
Oh, that
to
was
the metal
so.
coffin? I was like, you dick! You were trying to upsell a coffin to a child.
Like
Wow.
you know
Yes,
he
I
doesn't
agree with
have
that.
money. Like this is a small town. He definitely knows who this family is. You know they don't come from money, and you're gonna try and upsell them on a coffin for what, a 12-year-old kid? Like, I hate
Ugh.
people.
Yeah,
Ugh.
that guy was a
it
dick.
led to a conversation where I just leaned over to Sarah and I said, "Hey, if I was to die like next week, just put me in the ground. I don't want to
Just
deal
dump
with
Cremation.
me.
people.
Just
I don't
dump
want
me
you
in
to
the
deal with
river.
people like that. Well, I don't know about that, but
I would like my
um,
death to be interesting and freak people out. Just have my body wash up on the river somewhere and just freak everybody out. Like at least make it comical.
can we talk about the best interaction of the episode, which was Hopper with that guy at the bar?
Oh
Oh,
That
you mean
was
yes,
my
Officer O'Bannon?
that was
yeah,
enjoyable.
that was my favorite thing in this entire episode was just him going back and forth with him, and then just cuts to him beating the beating the hell out of O'Bannon.
Well, because Hopper was doing a brilliant job investigating. He heard on the news, well, at the I think it was at the morgue where he was watching the TV, or no, it was at the police station when he was interviewing the mortician guy about
Gary.
how the state police took over the whole autopsy. He hears
Well,
on
I
the
thought it was
news
kind of
how
unnecessary.
yeah, but it's like he hears on the news, state trooper David O'Bannon. So that's where he got the name. Tracked him down to this random bar, as you know, all sketchy, state police officers go to is just a random little dive bar to watch a game, and you just see Hopper playing dumb and just playing him for all it's worth, waiting for those little bits of information to come out to be like, all right, this is the right guy. He's up to no good, and calls him on the whole jurisdiction of where the quarry was covered, and basically says, yeah, you were not supposed to be the one to cover up this body. And so
Now I
I
gotta
know
beat
you're
your
up.
ass.
Yeah. So now we switch outside to just him just pummeling him. And then we see the sketchy car in the background. I was waiting for Hopper to pop off a couple bullets, but he holds back. He shows restraint. I don't know
That
why.
wasn't gonna happen. That wasn't gonna happen.
Well, he,
And
he's
then
beating
he
up random strangers in bars. Why
Yeah,
not
but he's
pop
not
off a couple?
shooting them.
no,
Hey,
he gave
There's
that
levels
dude
to this.
he gave that dude a 2-piece and a can of soda, and then
I'm
he
ready
turned
for some
around on the
onion,
van.
Hopper.
He turned around on the van, and then he turned back around to the guy as if he thought he was just gonna stand there. Like, of course the dude's gonna run away.
Yeah, he
Like
was. I
you
was
can't
a
be
bit
shocked at that.
surprised that he was surprised. Like, hey man, I'm just waiting for you to return to beating my ass.
Like why did he not just hold him with one hand and then with the same motion just turn around and then look? Instead he's
He's
like,
like, I got bigger fish to fry. I got to figure out what this car's got going on.
but then he lets his only lead to that point go, And then at that point, he just goes, "Fuck it, I'm gonna."
It's to protect the plot. That's all.
I guess. I mean,
But
just could have
then
been handled
he,
differently.
We
even
can't
as
get too much
someone,
information.
I
even as
guess.
someone who knows how all of this goes, and Tommy, I wonder if you were any different because obviously you and I have watched this before, but we don't remember every single detail. But we
Mhm.
know that Will is not dead. But
Yes.
I was still
What?
tense. I was still tense when he was about to cut up that body
But even he
because I
was
was
too.
like, yeah, and they did a great job of, and you know you can feel it when someone who knows how it's going to go, who's watched it before and knows how it's going to turn out, is still tense.
I mean,
So
rewatching
it
it
was
this
a job well done.
rewatching it this past week, I even felt the tension of just you can tell Hopper's debating in his head. He's like, if I cut this body open and it's a real body, he's like, I'm fucked on so many levels.
Yeah,
And he's like, and then I have the
the
guilt of
career's done.
cutting open some poor innocent kid's body
A
for no
12-year
reason.
old
But
kid. Yeah,
yeah, but then he has the that judgment call of I know my hunch is right. I'm gonna go in, and he just finally goes in and cuts it open. Just the shock on his face when he pulls out the cotton fluff.
taxidermy.
Yeah.
Oh, so Connor, Nick, how excited were you when you saw that Will's body was a fake?
Um,
Were you
I
expecting the plot
mean,
twist?
I can honestly say that that did not surprise me. Um, and I think I mentioned maybe 2 weeks ago or last week, I can't remember, but um, the Walking Dead kind of ruined me with how I perceive deaths in shows. Uh, as soon as everything happened, I kind of just thought like, I don't think he's really dead. And then when they had the body, I just thought, this all seems too easy and too convenient. Um, so once that kind of happened, I just, I kind of wasn't surprised. But
Yeah.
once he opened up the body with the taxidermy and all that, then I was like, okay, now we're getting somewhere.
Connor, what about you? Were you surprised?
I was not surprised by him not being a fake, like the body being a fake. Um, I was definitely shocked though that like when he was about to cut him up, I had no idea what he was looking for in the first place. I thought he had like some hunch or something that like that would give him like how I was viewing it was this body that was there was maybe someone else that was doctored to look like Will. Like it could be some other random kid. Who knows? Like who knows how far the government in this show would go? No, it would not put me past them to have a stand-in. Um, so I was definitely shocked that was like actually like, cotton, like and like taxidermy getting pulled out. I'm like, oh, not what I was expecting. But like I was very ready to see like blood come out or whatever they use for
Well, they kind
preservation.
of give a little hint to it right before he cuts open the
Because
body.
he starts pressing, right? He starts pressing down, like
I
if
don't
there's
even think it
anything
was the
there.
pressing down part. It was more the fact because when you're obviously a dead body, you go cold. I think he touched it and it probably felt room temperature, and he's like, "That
Mm,
can't be right."
true.
Dead body should be cold and stiff. Whereas this probably, I'm guessing, was plasticky or rubbery and just room temperature. So that was
Yeah.
probably his first giveaway of like, this can't be a real body,
Hmm.
and probably is what pushed him to end up cutting open the stomach to find the fluff.
Yeah. But yeah, it was definitely I thought it was still a very much a suspenseful build up for it.
Yes, absolutely. But I think that covers most of what happened, and then we get to the final kind of culmination of events where we start off. I think the best part to start with that is the whole Hawkins lab. We see the flashback scene with Dr. Brenner kind of going through with 11 a little advancement on their test that they were doing with her, where she's basically being tasked with um, finding a person and repeating what they're talking about. And we see her able to tune in to the radio and basically, or the intercom system, and start basically live feeding this guy talking. And that kind of
It's
connects
one
right back.
hell of an ability.
Oh, it's almost as cool as Professor X, but just not on the same level.
It's very close though.
But at the same time, it's very taxing on her because she can't use that ability as frequently as someone like Professor X, who can just read anybody's mind. Like, she's always, she has that,
She has to
the
strain
bloody
really hard
nose.
for it.
Unless she's a mutant.
I mean, I don't know if she's able to strengthen her ability, but it's just not something she can do multiple times in a row. Like, it definitely takes a toll on her body doing it just once.
So, kind of off topic, but something that it definitely reminded me of. So any of you guys like kind of like history buffs at all, or weird history?
I mean, I am.
So have you ever heard of what's called is the Thing, or also known as the Great Seal Bug?
That I have not heard.
I'm not.
So this is something that was created by the Russians back in 1945.
Of course it was.
So, but honestly, the technology was really interesting. So what it is pretty much is so what it is, actually, I'll send you a picture in the Discord so you guys can see what I'm talking about here. I'll just send it to the Wikipedia page. So pretty much what it is the Russians gave the embassy of the United States a symbol of the United States Great Seal, and with that, they actually had an antenna that is within the seal itself, and it's not powered by anything. And how they used it was the antenna would pick up the frequencies or vibrate to the voices in the room. And when the Russians wanted to listen in on to the bug, they would set their radio to a certain frequency, and it will pick up whatever's communicating from the vibration. So to me, 11 was doing something very similar. For the technology, if anyone has heard of a theremin, which is an instrument, where you use your hands to create an electromagnetic wave, pretty much like capacitors for batteries, and by changing them, you can actually change the pitch and the volume of your tone. Like a lot of the stuff in the 1950s, like what's the big song from shit, how can I not think of this movie right now? Scarecrow, Tin Man, Lion,
Wizard of Oz.
Thank you.
Oh my god!
Wow, that's the one you're in trouble with,
dude. Right. So the main the main song in that one, with the rainbow. I can't remember the name of the song, but
Jesus
that song,
Christ,
dude, I am blanking right now. It is late at night, and I am not thinking that clearly.
It's somewhere.
Somewhere on the rainbow. Thank you. Thank you.
There we go.
So
my God.
So that song was composed with a theremin. And the guy who created the theremin, was the one who actually designed this instrument for the Russians when the Russians pretty much kidnapped them and forced them to do science for them.
Gotcha.
But when we come back to 11, to me, 11's doing that same thing. She's using her mind to, because obviously she can, she has this supernatural ability to pick up the frequency, or pick up the vibrations of what this person's saying, and then she's just broadcasting it off to something else, like a radio would take in that the thing would do. Like, it's kind of like that same kind of science. I thought that was pretty cool. Like, oh, it's kind of that same idea behind it. Yeah, it's for those who want to look at some weird science. It's pretty cool. I'm actually trying to build one right now, so hopefully it'll work one of these days.
All right then. let us know when that is done, so we can play around with it.
Oh, definitely. That's why I love my job.
So going out off of that, we kind of get a quick back and forth where we have 11 doing this training, and we hear the monster's footsteps, and it's just a lot of back and forth flashing between the Byers house with Joyce and the gang in the AV lab at school. And we see Joyce hearing Will through the wall, which had to have been freaky to just hear your kid coming through the wall and just having no idea where the hell your kid is. And we see it, I don't even know how to explain it. It's just like a red fleshy type substance come out of the wall, and you can see Will's face. So it's like we finally get the confirmation Will is alive. Even though we kind of got a minor confirmation that Will's body is a fake, but we know Will's alive. And 11 is just tuning everything out. So basically, the gang is listening in on the whole conversation between Joyce and Will, and we hear just Will kind of scream, "It's like home, but it's dark and it's cold." And that was kind of freaky to hear because he's basically at his house in what we kind of know is the Upside Down. So poor Will's being tracked down, trying to get to his mom, but can't because he's stuck in this, the Upside Down, doesn't know how to get out. So, Connor, Nick, do you know or have any idea of how Will's going to get out of the Upside Down?
Well,
Because we could see them. We could see a physical barrier. Do you know how it works?
We kind of we kind of stepped over it a little bit, but we had that scene in the Hawkins lab where they do send someone into this, because you can tell they're like the one thing that I guess is intriguing me most right now about the Upside Down, as you can say, is that in the lab it looks like a living entity, like not just this monster that's there, but the kind of like how a plant reacts to the environment around it. The tendrils and the walls, they react that same way. So when the guy went in there, you can see the thing close it up by itself,
yep,
and like reattached, and even after that, when they pulled after the guy, I've I forgot it was Spencer, so it was SP something. When the guy was in there and they're communicating with him, it's like, oh, I have low visibility, no, everything, like, no, I really can't see something moving around here. And then of course he was attacked. Once they pulled it back in, you can see it kind of open up a little bit for it, and then slowly close right back up, kind of like a wound, like quickly seals. And I was like, is this thing also like a plant that's alive, and like or is it just like is the monster connected to the environment itself? Like, are they all one thing, or are they separate things where the monster just lives in this world and they just kind of coexist within each other?
I like that theory. I know Mitchell probably will as well. You're kind of on the right track there. Nick, what are your thoughts on that?
So I share a little bit of that. Probably not to the degree of the description that Connor just gave. I definitely think that it, that I don't exactly know what to call it. I guess we'll say it's a portal. I guess for now, but
yeah, I think for the purpose, I think portal
for the purposes of this, yeah. So I think obviously that is going to be a main way. Now this is probably gonna come off as like a joke, but I think another way is probably something they're not going to do. But I mean, if they just willingly go out and quote get eaten, that's kind of a way, in my opinion, to not even, I don't want to say sacrifice. Well, I guess it's a sacrifice, but I guess if the monster is what got them there in the first place, I feel like they could do that if they were willing, but the portal is probably the better option. that's what I would say.
Now, Mitchell, I want your opinion on this, because the one thing, having watched the show multiple times now and seeing it all the way through, the one part about the Upside Down that doesn't make sense to me is we have this portal inside the lab, and then we have this supposed spot in the buyer's house.
Hmm.
The portal opens and closes on its own in the lab, but the one at the buyer's house, you see it, and we saw a monster come out of it last episode, so we know something come in and out of it. But then Joyce breaks a hole in the wall, and yet there's no sign of
nothing
it
there.
being there.
Hold
So
on, we
having
also
seen it, yeah, go
hold
ahead.
on. There's something else that we never brought up either. Is that we never talked about it from the last episode, episode 3, is where that monster did come out of the wall,
Yeah,
and
that's what I
it
was
did
just
chase.
saying.
No, I was saying it did chase her down, but then the wall repaired itself.
Yes,
So
and that, but you don't see the upside down through that hole though. That's the point. It's like in the lab, you see it, like you see the vines coming out. There's no evidence of that at all in the buyer's house. It's just a blank wall, and even
Yeah,
when there
she's
was a
just
hole there,
torn
there was
through the
no,
wall.
yeah, there was no
here
upside down to be seen.
I would propose this then. All right. So from my time looking at different stuff when it comes like media and things, so that the first thing I keep thinking of is like Legend of Zelda, when you have and Link to the Past, you have your regular world and you have your dark world,
Mhm.
and it could be one of those situations where it would say if something happens in reality, it will impact the upside down, but maybe whatever happens to the upside down doesn't impact the real world, so hence it will return to the state it used to be. Because that's the best thing I can think of right now. Because I've again, in gaming, I've seen mechanics like that before, but like it depends. The reality of how the show's portraying it. We'll see in the future. We can discuss later on.
Mhm.
As I get more information, we can discuss this more. But no, that's the thing that I see it as, because we already had glimpses with Barb when she was taken, that it looked exactly like where she was but it was an empty pool and everything was degraded. So it definitely was a different state that they saw, but there were changes that happened.
Mhm.
So that's what I am currently theorizing about that.
Okay,
I do also have one more theory that I kind of just thought of.
let's hear it.
I have zero idea if this plays part into anything, of course, but I noticed that throughout like all the episodes so far that whenever the monsters appear, well, I guess not all the time, but for most of the times there's always like music being played in the background or like radio waves going
Yeah.
off. So I feel like there's some frequency stuff that could also happen to open said portal. Like if Joyce is playing music in like Will's room, I feel like
Mhm.
that's maybe a way and why she can't communicate.
Okay.
Um, but if they're, I guess, in a place that like doesn't have anything that can like transmit frequencies, then they probably can't talk, because you see 11 is like really fascinated with that radio that Mike's got.
Yep.
So I think that might have to do with things, but it also could do absolutely nothing.
I think you're gonna be in for a treat come season season 4.
Much my powers of prediction. Just,
So we'll have to make sure we write this down and come back to it later on.
and I've literally never looked at anything, so
Okay.
that's just a guess.
Yeah. So after that, we kind of get the end of the episode where good old Lonnie comes home to comfort Joyce,
That's
which I was
right.
not happy about. I don't know if I'm guessing she called him. We don't see her call him, but fucking
Does she
Lonnie
have a
shows
working
up.
phone?
I don't think
I
she
don't.
called him.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know how she got in contact with him.
Maybe
Because
maybe
last
I
just
time I
think they
just
checked,
might have.
maybe.
Last
Maybe
They might have
Jonathan
filed
got
a
fooled.
contract with him
Well,
because I'm
hold on,
guessing that if your kid dies, they're gonna be like, "Hey, your kid died." They
hold on,
probably
hold on,
call
hold on.
Lonnie.
Well,
Maybe what
okay,
Jonathan said also got to him too.
no, okay. Here's my idea. What happened? Because think of the stuff that's happened so far. Joyce tried to call him earlier. He didn't answer. Her phone's now dead, so she's kind of doing her own thing. John then went to her once. Lonnie knows that Will's missing. I guess the dead kid dying that, or quote unquote dying, that he would go over. But it would not shock me, it being a small town, that after Will and Jonathan like freaked out at each other, someone contacted Lonnie. No,
Probably.
there's definitely nosy people out there who's like, "Hey, did you hear what happened with Jonathan and your ex just recently about Will's death?" And I could definitely see some nosy person just like getting all in on that.
Yeah. But either way, I was not happy to see Lonnie showed up. It's just going to cause more drama. But that's my take on that. And then finally, we get Hopper showing up at Hawkins' lab with the gate cutters. Ballsy move on
Good.
Hopper's part because
Little
he
bolt
knows
cutters.
how well they have that place covered in terms of cameras. So I don't know what he's got planned up his sleeve, but you just show up at a government facility with gate cutters, you're asking for trouble.
Well, we'll see
So
what responds.
at
Good
that,
place to
we
leave
have
it off that episode.
Yep. So that's the end of that episode. So time for ratings and predictions.
Izzo, go ahead.
All right, so I have no idea what I gave last week's episode. I think it was 8 point something.
You
Maybe
gave it
was
an
just
A
eight?
flat.
8 flat. Okay, so
Eight
this
flat.
one I think.
Have the spreadsheet up.
This one. Okay, that's good. Uh, I think the progression has been to my liking, so I would give this one probably an 8.2.
I just love how I
Yeah,
said
an
it.
eight
To
point
my
two,
liking.
slightly more.
All right,
Yeah, because I mean, like, to me, like,
8.2,
there hasn't been a filler episode yet. Like that's kind of like I'm not like waiting for a filler episode, but I guess at some point I'm suspecting that there will be one. I mean, I could be wrong, but yeah. So it was better. I liked it than the last one, and yeah, 8.2.
I gave this one the same exact score I had last week, an 8.9, because I thought same thing. Like it was again 8.9, great score. Like it had great pacing, storylines were great. Like it didn't push. It wasn't worse than the last episode. It wasn't better than the last episode. It was exactly what I would want from it, and I was very happy with it. No, it hits all the right notes. You have the investigation with Hopper. You have you finding more about this weird upside down entity thing. No, the actual Nancy storyline is actually getting interesting now with her conversations with Jonathan, and they're starting their own troop, I guess you could say, of finding things out. And then you have the kids with 11. I thought that was also very good with them, literally sneaking into the school and literally blowing up the only good radio that they just bought, or the teacher just bought. So I thought still fantastic episode. I think it's very very easily deserved to be tied with last week's episode.
Okay. I'm gonna have to give it an 8.5 this week.
So same
I
as
really
last week.
enjoyed the episode. I'd say a very well balanced episode, kind of what you were saying, Connor. To me, I love the fact that you can balance the show with comedy, suspense, and a little bit of horror thrown in there. I like a good balance. And like we were saying a couple weeks ago, we want more Hopper. We got a lot of Hopper in this episode, and I love his character. He's definitely my favorite of the show, besides Dustin. But overall, it was good. That's all I gotta say. 8.5.
Mr. Accurate.
All right. Well,
here we go.
I think that this week you guys are gonna like what I have to say because I'll
Is it a
give
whole
you all
number?
the crazy. I'll give you the crazy decimal points and get down to the nitty gritty when I need to. but this episode didn't really call for that. I'm just giving it a straight up 9.
Nice.
I thought
Hold
I
on.
thought about
To be fair,
I'm just
that's to
happy
you-
it's a whole number.
That's to you is 9.00. That's just to be fair.
9.00.
Now
Yes,
I'm gonna smack the shit
because
out of you.
because I thought about 9.0, like I was like a 9.02, maybe like it. I was like, no, this one's just flat out 9.
Good.
And
So-
believe me, I'm not done. This isn't like, oh, I give in. No. This episode just called
No,
for
you're saying
flat
9.00.
9.00. Yes. I really thought that this episode had a little bit of everything. I liked that we started to get more of the again, Hopper investigation stuff has been my favorite part of this season so far. And I like that we're starting to move a little bit towards something. We're not waiting for something to happen. Things are happening and things are coming to light. And this episode was thoroughly entertaining. It moved quickly. It's definitely my favorite of the season so far.
That's a big jump for you too, Mitchell, because compared to the previous 2 episodes when you averaged out for an 8.5 for those 2, that's a big 0.5 increment for you. So,
oh no, this one was definitely a good step forward compared to where we've been at before.
Yeah,
and I like those episodes too. I've been the highest one on I think at least 2 of the last 3. And
episode 2 you're the highest on compared to everybody else.
That's right. You were a little higher on 3 than I was.
Yeah, I was the same as this week, 8.9.
Yeah. But no, it's moving along well.
Overall, though, let's be real. When it comes to everybody's scores and seeing the averages of everybody so far, either as good or even better than the previous week, and like that's an average of 8.65, which honestly, really clean number. I like to see that.
Don't get used to it.
But no, still, it's still a deserved score because of the fact that, like, to me, how I saw it when it came to this week and last week is that the tempos of the episodes were different, but the tempos felt right for the episodes, if that makes sense.
Weren't we in the 7s for some of the recent ones? So this might be
episode 2 was 7s. Episode 2 was 7.7, 7.5, 7.2, and you were the highest. We went up to 8.52.
Okay, and what was 3? What was the average for 3?
Average for 3 was 8.46.
Okay, so not as sizable of a jump as I had expected.
No, it was more so the fact that, like, you have been floating around you being highest in episode 2 definitely increased it up to make it more closer to the rest, because us 3 were more down the episode. Like, for me, was the pacing of it. Mm-hmm. But we were definitely more in line with how everybody's grading the episodes to seeing the same kind of increases.
That's what you want to see when you're starting, especially in a first season where it really has to grab you or you lose interest in it. It's going up.
Yeah,
that's what you want. And
like, I'll say this too, even at the little dip in 2, the fact that 3 and 4 caught you right back in, and you're like, oh, it's like the payoff paid off.
Do you usually how many episodes do you give a TV show to really figure out, like, if it's for you or not?
For me, it depends on the show and how long of a show and how long the episodes are. If it's a show that has episodes that are like 50 minutes or more, and it's like a 8-episode show, I usually go halfway. I'll try my hardest. If it's a show that's been out for a while, I'll try and finish at least the first season, because a lot of shows sometimes have a weak middle. But with the longer episode shows, I'm more likely to jump off of it. But that's just me.
I get that. Yeah, because I know that there's some shows where people are like, oh, well, the first season isn't very good. It's like, oh, well, then that's I might just not watch that one, because you're telling me the entire first season isn't any good. But this one definitely came out swinging, and I know that, Connor and Nick as two people who have not seen the show, if you were not held up at gunpoint by Tommy to watch these episodes, it seems to me that from your grades, you would still be interested in watching it if
Definitely. To
this were
me,
not the
it's
case.
for me when it comes to shows. I think I mentioned this earlier, but like I have to. If I get started on one, if I get hooked, like I would seriously. It's hard for me not to binge this right now, because the fact that
Yeah.
it because you
Yep.
want to keep going, and I have a reason to actually want to, like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. Like for me when it comes to shows, uh I'm very much like the first 3 episodes. If you don't get me by then, I'm out. And I know some have a slow burn, or even like a kind of situation with like a Chekhov's firing squad, where, for those who don't know, it's like there's different things that are happening and then everything kind of happens all at once. um but like, to me, like I guess the best thing that I guess the like to me, I watch a lot of different types of media. Like the most recent show I watched was I have with the crunch like or anime Crunchyroll, Jujutsu Kaisen. And
Ooh, I've
I was
heard
like,
good things about that one.
yeah, and like I was like, you know what, I've heard good things, I'll give it a shot. No, I threw on the first 2 episodes with me and my girlfriend, and like like by episode 2, I'm like, this is good, I'm hooked, let's go. And
All
to
right.
me, to me, if I don't get that feeling of like that I'm invested, then it's hard for me to keep up. Like that's what happened with the Game of Thrones for me. Was like I got to the first couple episodes, like, oh, like this first season, the first 2 seasons were good, but it comes to a point where it just kind of dies out to me, or I lose interest, and then I'm out completely. It could be
See, the
just AD.
opposite happened to me where I wasn't really able to watch it until like late 2018, early 2019. And then by that point, I really liked what I was seeing. I was about midway through the first season, but then everyone started talking about how bad the last season was, and it made my interest in watching the show plummet
That
because
also happened as
everyone
well.
was because everyone was talking about how just terrible the last season was, and I heard some things, and those were indeed very stupid things in a finale.
Hmm.
So I, I still have never made it past the third season of Game of Thrones, and I probably never will, even though I've heard so many good things about
I
the
mean,
middle
you can
seasons
make
of
the
that show.
argument though. You can make the argument though that a show is good based on how much people trash on it if it's bad. Only because you become so invested in the characters, and that's kind of what happened with Game of Thrones. Everybody was so invested in all these characters, you really love them, and then to see their story arcs kind of just get trashed in the final season, you get really pissed off because you're like, that's just not how these characters would have acted.
I heard the same thing about Dexter, and that kind of turned me off to Dexter as well because everyone just keeps telling me about, man, this show's phenomenal. That finale, no.
As someone who's
And
watched, as someone who watched Dexter, actually went through that. Yeah, that sucked. Great show. It was a great show, and like I watched it later on, and like I maybe like I watched Dexter when I first moved up to New York, because I had like a week or two, and I was like, I have time. I'm just going to binge something because I wasn't starting work for the next like week, and I been through Dexter. I was like, oh, this is amazing, like great style, and then this is coming from who's a huge like mystery kind of fan. Like I grew up with like Bones and all that kind of shows, and once they hit that finale, I was like, really? This is how you're gonna end it? Like, so yeah, yeah. But for me, like if I'm invested, I am completely in. But like what comes to Game of Thrones too is like it's also like that I have like ADHD brain where like if I do lose interest, I can just completely forget about something. And if it's not like
yeah,
in the forefront of my brain, oh, I need to watch another episode of this. It might just fall off. I'm like I haven't watched this in a while, and I have to sit down and actually put energy out to watch this again.
Fair enough. So let's wrap this up with our predictions for next week's episode, which is titled "The Flea and the Acrobat."
The
take that as you will. Connor, Nick, what do you think's going to happen?
Jeez. I think, man, honestly, I don't even have that much of a prediction other than that I think they're gonna get more contact, like Mike and the kids are gonna get more contact with Will somehow through Eleven's powers. But I think in terms of Hopper, I think he is going to get inside and find inside the lab, that is, and actually find some evidence that points to like who and what the hell is going on. Um, Other than that, I unfortunately don't have much of a prediction. I think that's where the next episode is going.
That's enough. Connor, how about you?
I'm low key hoping for Hopper to go like secret agent, like Bob and Weave, like not get caught and like Bob and Weave throughout the building, and see what he can find. Will it happen? Maybe. No. They might like it could be a situation where it to me it can go either one or two ways. It can go one way where he gets in, like I don't think he'll get caught, at least initially. But I think that either he does go undetected, or they're interrogate him later, where like it might come to bite him in the ass. And the other thing I'm actually really interested in is how much more Nancy will get invested into finding Barb, because I guess the one storyline plot that I was like kind of iffy on until recently, until Barb got kidnapped, was okay. What's Nancy's investment? And now she's completely invested in this whole situation. I'm curious the dynamics of her, Jonathan, and like will her and Joyce speak together? Like, oh, what did you see? What did you see? And no, I still think that those two that no, I think it's going to separate into a party of now Nancy, Joyce, and Jonathan, and then you still have the kids who are still doing their own thing because who trusts adults? So we'll see how those two will collaborate later in the future, or if they do. But that's how I kind of see a coalition of Joyce, Nancy, and Jonathan actually, because now they know that Joyce isn't crazy. She actually might know something more. Who knows what Lonnie does though? Because screw Lonnie.
So I think that those some good predictions, but I think that wraps up tonight's episode. So if anybody else has anything to say it now. Forever hold your peace. And with that, we're the Jersey Nerds. Hope you enjoyed this episode of the Strange Nerds podcast. We'll see you next week, where we cover episode 5, The Flea and the Acrobat. Have a good night.
Those